Hello everyone, I had a request to make a video about the differences between a sole trader and a limited company when operating as an indie game studio, developing games, selling games for money on Steam, things like that. This is from a UK perspective. I'm going to be going over the sort of advantages of both. I'll caveat all of this with you should definitely do your own research, find out what works best for your situation. But I've got my serious hat on. We're going to talk serious business, so let's get straight into it. So the main difference between a sole trader and a limited company is the legal structure. A sole trader is a self-employed individual who is the sole person in their business. As a sole trader, you have total control over the business and you also keep 100% of your profits, but that also means you get income tax on those profits. It also means that you are personally liable for any debts that the business may incur. A limited company is a separate legal entity, so it's distinct from you as the owner or shareholder of the business. This distinction is important because it gives the owner limited liability. This means that your personal assets are protected in case the business falls into financial difficulties. This reduces some of the risk of creating a business. So another difference relates to tax. Sole traders will pay income tax on their business profits, whereas corporation will pay corporation tax, and then owners or shareholders can take dividends. Paperwork for sole traders is often simpler, and with a limited company, you need to do things like register with Company House and file annual accounts and reports. So let's talk about the advantages of a sole trader over a limited company. The first advantage, and probably the biggest one, is just the fact that it's simpler. Because there is no difference between you as a trader and your business, there are fewer legal and financial requirements to meet. It makes it easier to just get started and start a business on a smaller scale. There's less paperwork, taxes are simpler, it's that kind of thing. Another one is that as a sole trader, you have complete control over the business and you keep 100% of the profits. Now for some disadvantages of being a sole trader, the biggest one is the liability. You're personally liable for the debts of your business, which means that things like your personal assets like a car or a house could be seized from you if the business falls into financial difficulties. Another disadvantage is prestigiousness or the look of the company. Some people may see sole traders as less established or less stable than a limited company. This could affect your ability to attract publishers or investors into the indie game studio that you create. You can do less tax planning as a sole trader. So if you're a limited company, you can take things like dividends, which usually carry a lower tax charge than income tax, which you'd be paying if you were a sole trader. Another disadvantage is finance options, so it's harder to attract investors but also apply for loans, things like that. Some investments will require you to issue shares, which you can't do as a sole trader. And the last disadvantage is that it's quite hard to expand. If you want to hire someone full-time, it's going to be more difficult to do that as a sole trader. Not to say that you can't commission artists or musicians for bits of work here and there, but it's definitely easier to expand your business as a limited company. For these reasons, I'd probably recommend being a sole trader for someone who's just starting out and just wants to try making games, just making one or two, especially if those games are free. I don't necessarily see the need of becoming a limited company. And you can always change later down the line and expand to become a limited company if you start out as a sole trader. And now we'll go over some advantages of being a limited company over a sole trader. So the first one is limited liability. Your personal liability is limited, which means that your personal assets, things like your car and your house, are protected in case the business runs into lots of debts and financial difficulty. Another advantage is tax efficiency. So businesses who are a limited company will pay corporation tax as opposed to income tax, which is usually lower. And then you can also, as an owner or a shareholder, take dividends, which also has a lower tax charge on them. I think in the UK, you can take up to £500 dividends from your business tax-free. So that's like an extra boost there as well. So yeah, it's definitely better tax-wise. Another advantage is continuity. So because the limited company is a separate entity to its owners, it means that you can appoint a new owner, you can sell your business, things like that are much easier when you're a limited company. The last one is greater growth potential. So limited companies usually find it easier to expand and grow because you can bring in shareholders and secure investments a lot easier. And now we'll go over some disadvantages of a limited company over a sole trader. So the first one is that it's complex to set up and lots of admin. So you have to register your company with Companies House from the start, which comes with a fee. The company's accounts must also be filed publicly, which could also be seen as a disadvantage. Some people might not want to share that information publicly, but you need to do that if you're a limited company. Personally, I find it important to remain open with that kind of thing, and I did actually do a video going over the tax year for 2024-2025 and what Wizard Shrimp Games made in that year. If you're interested, the link will be in the description below. All of this admin you can of course outsource, all the taxes and things like that, but they will obviously come with a fee. I personally do outsource these, and I have hired an accountant to do this for me because I can't quite wrap my head around it and I don't have the time to learn it and to complete that admin. Accounting fees for a small business aren't too bad, but you're talking around £100 to £200 for a dormant company. So that means a company that isn't trading, which is what Wizard Shrimp Games was for a few years. So that's just like once per year. And then if you're trading, it could be from £300 to £500, £600, that kind of thing for doing your accounts when you're trading. Another disadvantage is running costs, which I kind of touched on already, but things like accounting fees and Companies House fees as well. Things like if you change the company's address, you have to pay a fee, things like that. There's also the potential that you get higher banking charges, depending on who you bank with. And another disadvantage, which I'm not too clued up on, but apparently it can be quite difficult to close down a limited company. It can come with charges and things like that and lots of admin. So for these reasons, I would recommend a limited company for someone who's a little bit more serious about starting an indie game studio, that wants to create a bunch of games, wants to sell games for money, and has a little bit of investment up front to pay these accounting fees, or the time and drive to want to learn the processes and do all the admin themselves. This is the route I went down. Wizard Shrimp Games is a limited company, and I'm glad I did. For me personally, it's just really nice to have that distinction. I find it helps with things like work-life balance and accounting, and wrapping my head around that kind of thing is just a lot easier for me. If you're still unsure about what is best for you, sole trader or limited company, you should ask yourself these following questions. Do I want to have complete control over the business and keep 100% of the profits despite paying income tax on them? If the answer is yes, then sole trader is probably better for you over a limited company. Am I looking for a level of legal protection and to limit personal liability? If the answer is yes, then limited company would be better for you over a sole trader. And finally, do I plan to scale and grow the business? If the answer is yes, then limited company is definitely the way to go over a sole trader. So I hope that was useful for you. Again, do your own research, come up to your own conclusion. I'm not an expert in the field, but this is just my ideas and my experience with this. If you enjoyed the music in the background of this video, it was created by Sweeps, and it is the soundtrack to my new game Mushroom Clicker. If you're interested, the link will be in the description to go and wishlist it on Steam. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.